Welcome to Cut to the Chase, where we talk about compelling legal, regulatory, and public interest information and news. Your host is Greg Goldfarb, an attorney, entrepreneur, investor, and activist.
All right, everybody, it's time for our favorite podcast, Cut to the Chase. When I was growing up, my mother would tell me things, and I would, of course, question her and say, I'm not so sure I could buy that. She said, you would make a great Philadelphia lawyer. I'm like, really? I didn't really understand it. But in any event, today I brought two outstanding Philadelphia lawyers. And now that I've grown up and matured, so to speak, I now understand what she's talking about. Tobi Millrood and Dr. Barry Magen are here to talk about the latest pharmaceutical disaster, a product that I never would have in my entire life believed could cause any damage, but teardrops, artificial teardrops, EzriCare. Anyway, Tobi and Dr. Magen, how are you doing today?
Good. Good to see you, Greg. Thanks for having us.
Both of these gentlemen are with a powerhouse personal injury mass tort law firm in Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, Delaware, Kline Specter. For those involved in the Vioxx litigation, they were on the top of the food chain and got a humongous settlement. Many of their lawyers, including the ones that we're speaking here, got $1 million verdicts, multi-million-dollar verdicts, billion-dollar verdicts. And you could ask yourself, hey, has my lawyer ever gotten that kind of? I don't think so. One of the interesting things about this law firm, many people don't realize that a lot of mass tort cases, personal injury, med mal cases have very complicated medical issues. And you might scratch your head and say, hey, how does my lawyer know anything about that? Well, Kline Specter, actually 50 lawyers, 5 of whom are also doctors, including Dr. Magen here today. So did I get that right? Is that an accurate recitation?
The fact that we're up to 60 lawyers, but yes, we have 5 doctor lawyers, and we're privileged to have Dr. Magen as well.
All right, so we're going to talk about this product, these artificial teardrops, EzriCare, what's going on with it. February, FDA issued a warning that these eye drops were causing major problems, and let's discuss it. What, either one of you, I'm going to open the floor up. What is going on with this product? What happened? What is your law firm doing about it?
Oh, so I think we lost you there for a second, Greg, but I think Barry's going to talk extensively about the science, but in February, there was a voluntary recall of these products, EzriCare artificial tears, Delsam artificial tears. These products were manufactured by an Indian company called Global Pharma Healthcare. They were imported by an American company called Aru Pharma, and then they were sold over the counter that you could get in any CVS, Walgreens, whatever your pharmacy, as Delsam artificial tears or EzriCare artificial tears. There's also Delsam artificial eye ointment. And they were intended to lubricate the eye. And Barry will tell you about the real dangers with those, because unfortunately, these products, the reason they were recalled is it had a drug-resistant bacteria that's very dangerous.
All right, so Dr. Magen, let's get into the science. What's wrong with this product, and what kind of chaos is it causing?
Well, first of all, the artificial tears are a product that's used to relieve dryness and irritation in people's eyes. Some of them have preservatives to prolong the usage of the product and to avoid bacterial overgrowth or contamination. And there are preservative-free artificial tears for people who can't tolerate preservatives, and those preservative-free artificial tears usually are contained in single-use containers. They can be a little more expensive. And what this company was doing was they were selling preservative-free eye drops, artificial tears, in multiple use containers, and it increased the risk of bacterial overgrowth after opening them. The pattern of contamination suggests that there was contamination of the artificial tears at the time it was manufactured. And we know that because the CDC, the FDA, and state and local health departments began investigating a multi-state outbreak of antibiotic-resistant Pseudomonas aeruginosa infections. It's a very virulent bacteria, and the form of the bacteria that was infecting people who used these eye drops was especially virulent. It was extensively drug resistant. It was never before seen in the United States prior to this outbreak. So this is the first time this strain of bacteria has ever been in the United States, and it was associated with eye drops. And as the FDA and the CDC began testing this, they realized that there was a strong association with the EzriCare eye drops. In fact, the vast majority of the cases have come from EzriCare artificial tears, but also Delsam Pharma has artificial tears, and the Delsam eye ointment was found to have that. And they're all manufactured by the same companies. And so what they found was that when they tested open and unopened packages, they found that there was Pseudomonas, this particularly virulent and drug-resistant form of Pseudomonas in the packages. So they were able to make that link. So, and that's what led in February to the Globa Pharma making the voluntary recall at the FDA's recommendation because of bacterial contamination.
All right. So you've got these teardrops. I'm a little unsure when you talked about like in a bacterial outbreak. Is this something like you open up the package and there's somebody sitting there and it jumps in their system, the person next to them, or do you actually have to directly apply the teardrops for the bacterial issue to kind of get into your system and cause the chaos and damage?
So the majority of these cases have come from putting the eye drops directly into your eyes. But some patients who developed these infections resided in long-term care facilities, and they were there with other known cases. So there is a potential that you can have a rapid spread in healthcare settings.
So the eye drops we're talking about, are there alternative eye drops? What was the whole, I mean, this is sort of a new product that just came about. I never even heard of it until recently.
There's many types of eye drops that can be used. It's just these particular ones that they're not manufactured in the United States. As I said before, they're making them preservative-free in multi-use containers, which is problematic and increases a risk of bacterial contamination. And there's something to be avoided. But this seems to be, these are the ones, the EzriCare and the Delsam artificial tears are the ones to avoid.
What was the purpose of the preservative-free aspect of it?
There are people who can't tolerate preservatives in the eye drops, and it can be irritating to them. And so if you have sensitive eyes, you may want to buy preservative-free eye drops. But those type of eye drops that are preservative-free are usually sold in single-use containers. They can be a little more expensive.
So for the ordinary person goes to Walgreens, CVS, they buy a product. You know, I would have to imagine that some people at this point, with all the problematic products out there, are asking themselves, are these products getting tested, or does somebody just manufactures them and they come and they get on the shelf at CVS? I mean, like, for example, this particular product, Was there any testing or anything like that, or they just put it on the shelf and away we go?
Great question, Greg, because there's a very different regulatory scheme when consumers go in to the pharmacy and they get a drug that's prescribed by their doctor. A prescription drug has to go through a very different avenue to be able to be taken by a human from our Food and Drug Administration versus an over-the-counter drug. An over-the-counter drug, while it still has to have benefits that outweigh the risks, the path to being able to be marketed and sold over the counter is much less restrictive and involves much less testing, because theoretically, the products that are sold over the counter either are relatively risk-free or have been out on the market for so long that they gain the confidence that they can be sold over the counter. So it's not to suggest that people should worry about every single thing that they purchase when they go into CVS or Rite Aid or Walgreens. There's lots and lots of course, safe products when they buy them over the counter. But it is a reason when you're dealing with something like your eyesight to consult with an ophthalmologist, an optometrist, or someone who's a specialist in that area. But even in that situation, unfortunately, sometimes when drug companies don't keep sanitary conditions or skip safety, no one can know that. Not the ophthalmologist, not the optometrist, not the consumer. So here in this situation, global pharma healthcare, we're going to find out in litigation what kind of corners were cut such that the safety of consumers was really put at risk.
So the fact that it was over the counter, I guess that's what's kind of troubling to me, because I would just assume that over the counter means the product has been in existence for a while. Like you said, that there's a level of reliability, but the fact that it's preservative free sounds like this is sort of a new product that shouldn't have been an over the counter product.
Well, again, there's a definite technical fork in the road as to what rises to the level of having to go through the kinds of animal testing and clinical testing, and there's multiple phases that you have to go through in order to get a prescription drug approved. The notion is that for things that are relatively risk-free, which lubricating an eye should be, which taking Tums for an upset stomach should be, which for putting, a Band-Aid on, for putting an ointment on a rash, a lot of these kinds of things are those kinds of things that should be risk-free. But if they're manufactured in an environment or are designed in such a way that could make them exposed to bacteria, it doesn't matter how safe and reliable a product should be, it could come with risk. This is not the first product that's been recalled first over-the-counter product that's been recalled because of this.
All right. Did the FDA, so it's over the counter, can the FDA order a recall, or they don't have the jurisdiction authority to do so?
The FDA can order a recall. It's very, very rare that the FDA has to get to that end, because a drug company would much rather voluntarily recall it and say, okay, we'll take it down, than actually have that hammer come down, which can come with other penalties and other problems for the company. So as Barry was saying before, here in this situation, these were voluntarily recalled in February. The FDA was ready to take action if need be, but the company voluntarily recalled these products.
All right, eye drops, I'm putting them in my eyes. There's an issue going on. How much damage could that do? How much damage has it done?
It's done pretty severe damage. So far, there's been 81 cases of people who have had serious infections from this. 14 people have experienced vision loss. 4 people lost their eyes and had to undergo a surgical removal of their eyeball called enucleation. And there's been 4 deaths.
What was the cause of death?
infection,
infection.
severe
Wow.
infection. Yeah.
So, yeah, so removing the eyeball. Some people have actually had their eyeballs removed because of this product.
Absolutely. Yes.
Wow, that's horrifying. So I'm assuming that Kline Specter, you guys are involved in this litigation.
We are.
Yes.
Tell me about the litigation. What's going on? Is it new? Is EzriCare fighting it? Where are we at with the case?
So this is going to be an interesting litigation. EzriCare and Delsam, they're not a big giant like Johnson & Johnson or Pfizer or Merck. These are relatively small companies. EzriCare is a small company in Lakewood, New Jersey. Delsam's a small company in New York. Global Pharma Healthcare Limited in India does not appear to be, a real behemoth company. So I would be surprised. It's been my experience. I've been doing these kinds of cases of harmful drugs or devices or over-the-counter products for almost 30 years. And it's my experience that when there's a voluntary recall, there's much less resistance put up by the company. I think what the company is likely to say in litigation is, as soon as we found out there was a problem, we voluntarily recalled it and we tried to stop the hurting. But that will not immunize them or keep them from having to face the music about the damage that was caused to these patients. So what do we expect? Well, oftentimes in over-the-counter products, you also see that the seller of the product is sued as well. Just like you were saying before, Greg, you'd like to know when you go into the CVS or the Walgreens or whatever pharmacy that this over-the-counter product is reliable, it's safe, it's not going to come with danger. And after all, that's what a CVS pharmacy or Walgreens pharmacy is for. You are picking up medicines in many cases for your health. And so the law allows us also to sue a seller if they didn't provide the necessary protections, if they didn't do their own homework about how new this drug was, about whether it had been tested, about whether it was safe, about the fact that it was multi-use, about the fact that if it gets exposed to air, could there be a problem with it? So what we expect in this litigation is that you will see Delsam, EzriCare, Global Pharma Healthcare, Aru Pharma, those players that were involved in the manufacture, sale, import of the drug to be named defendants. But you will also see in each individual case the place where it was purchased to be a named defendant in many of those cases.
And in these type of cases where you have, let's say, the Walgreens, I mean, how can they test something like this? Is there a requirement that, okay, somebody manufacturer comes and distributor, hey, we've got this new artificial teardrops. It's great. No preservatives. Some people can't handle preservatives. What are they supposed to do? How do they, what's your argument in terms of what they did not do that they should have done? I mean, when you say testing, I mean, it sounds great, but what actual testing could they have done to figure this out?
The thing about the law is sometimes it gets nice and simple to just evaluate things on a question of reasonableness. That's really what we're asking for, that people who sell products, who manufacture products, who deliver products, act the way a reasonable company would do. And if they depart from that reasonableness, they should be held accountable. It's pretty straightforward. So when a company like this, a Walgreens, a CVS, you have to expect, a consumer has to expect that before they purchase a product, there's been some homework that's been done.
Yeah.
If I manufacture something in my basement and I put it in nice packaging and I come into CVS tomorrow and I say, I've got this great product and it's a great homeopathic remedy and you can put it on your lips and it will block the sun and it'll be extra safe. CVS just can't sell that. Walgreens just can't sell that. They have to do some homework. They have to do some knowledge. And it will be very interesting to learn in discovery and in the litigation, what did these pharmacies do before they put these artificial tears up on the shelf.
All right. So we talk, a lot of my shows, we talk about mass torts, and there's 250,000 people involved in the case. And it's so unwieldy. In this case, we're talking about less than 100 people that we know of that have been affected by this product. Is this your quintessential mass tort, or is this just a situation where you have a number of people with the same product and the same types of injuries? Where does this fit in that kind of, are we multi-district litigation? How does this all play out? Or
Great
do
question.
you know?
We don't know yet because we don't know the full scope of how many people were exposed and injured by this. And you're right, the greater the number is, the more likely it is in a typical quote unquote mass tort. But mass torts come in all kinds of shapes and sizes, small and big. I've been involved in mass torts of 300 injured plaintiffs and 30,000 injured plaintiffs. Mass tort provides efficiencies for consumers that not only is there strength in numbers, that lots of people are taking on the defendants at the same time, but rather than have to wait your turn and have 81 depositions of the CEO of Delsam and the CEO of EzriCare and the marketing director and the design director, you take it in one fell swoop. So I expect there will be some coordination of these cases, whether it's a formal federal multi-district litigation or whether it's a state coordination of New Jersey cases, of New York cases. But there will also just be individual cases. If we have an individual that purchased it, at a Walgreens in Philadelphia, we might, and had the loss of an eye, we might very well sue not only the manufacturers but the company and try to bring suit in Philadelphia County, and that will be a standalone case that will be worked up.
All right, so Dr. Magen, let's talk science a little bit here. Is there a realistic fight about the science, or is EzriCare going to come back and say, hey, these products did not cause these type of injuries, there was no bacterial outbreak, you got it wrong? Or give us the state of the science here.
Well, the findings to date make it very hard for them to come back and make that kind of claim. As I said before, there is an outbreak of this very specific type of bacteria. It's never been seen before in the United States, and it's traced back to these eye drops. They're finding it in unopened packages of the eye drops. So when they open the eye drops and try to grow out, see what grows, what bacteria might be in there, this is what's growing out. So it's going to be very difficult for them to try to avoid responsibility by saying something like that.
All right, so if there's somebody out here that's been taking these eye drops and really has not been paying attention to the FDA, and maybe they were taking it 6-7 months ago, a year ago, they've got some problems, they don't realize what the problems are, now they're starting to hear about it. Should they do they need to keep the product? Do they need to go back and find the receipts that they bought the product? How is somebody going to prove that they actually use these products?
Well, there's a couple things there. As Barry mentioned, when we do these lawsuits in mass tort, the strongest way that we can prove causation is what we call a signature disease. It can't be produced by anything else. Humans don't produce Pseudomonas aeruginosa. Sorry if I butchered that pronunciation, Barry, but they don't produce that on their own. So number one, I think even if a patient comes in and said, I don't have the receipt and I don't have the bottle, but I know I went to CVS, I had dry eyes, and I had this, it's going to be hard for them to suggest that it could come from somewhere else. But yes, if you are listening and you know someone that's had a problem with this product, you should obviously not use the product again, but you should keep it to the side. That is evidence. And if you have a receipt, that is evidence. The product itself is the best evidence. The receipt is the second best evidence. But here, if someone has been diagnosed with this strain of bacterial infection, it came from one spot.
Yeah.
And so that even without that proof, I think you'd be able to make a claim.
All right. So just to be exceptionally clear, if there's somebody out there that used the product, you don't have a receipt, you didn't keep the product, you've got all these problems with your eyes and infections and all this stuff, you can still file a claim. You can still call your law firm and say, look, I took this product, you know, I've been going to the ophthalmologist or whatever, you know, because of all these problems that I'm having. That's good enough.
You'll have to have this diagnosis that, you know, tested for this infection. It's not enough to call you up, Greg, and say, Greg, I'd like to hire you because I'm having some blurry vision and some difficulty seeing at night, and I don't have the product and I don't have the receipt. But I used it. That won't be enough to bring a claim.
Only if you have that signature injury that
Correct.
basically could come from nothing else.
Correct. Or if you do have the product and, you know, fortunately you escaped, you know, losing your eye, but you're in the midst of ongoing, you know, care from a doctor, you do have the product, you do have the receipt, you know, that you may have a claim. But I just want to make it clear, if you don't have the product and you don't have the receipt, the only way you're really going to be able to pursue a claim, in my view, is if you have this signature infection.
All right. So I want Dr. Magen, I want to talk about want to get deep into the science of a signature injury, something that, you know, we have trouble even pronouncing. How does the scientific community come to identify this particular disease and name it? And in this particular case, how long has this kind of a disease? It's a disease, right? You would call it a disease, or?
Yes, it's a bacterial infection. Yes.
So how long has this particular type of infection been known in the medical community?
I can't tell you how long it's been known, but I can tell you that it's only been known in the United States for a very short period of time. The way they identified it was by growing it. Well, first of all, they identified it in people's eyes. It was associated with the eye infections, and then they worked backwards to try to trace where this came from, and they found that it came from these EzriCare eye drops. The way that they identified it and the specific characteristics of it are based on how drug resistant it is. It's extensively drug resistant. And it's got the actual name of it. I'm not even going to bore everybody by trying to read it off to you, but it's based on how drug resistant it is, all the different components that allow it to avoid susceptibility to antibiotics. So and we just haven't seen anything like that in our country before.
Yeah. So avoiding susceptibility to antibiotics sounds horrible.
Yes, it makes it hard to treat. It makes it very virulent. It makes, and leads to these kind of problems where people are losing their vision, their eyes, and their lives.
Yeah. I mean, it's just amazing that you could have an over-the-counter drug cause this kind of chaos. All right. So you guys your law firm has filed some cases in court over this, or
this is brand new. We're just preparing to file the very first case that will be filed very shortly here, probably in the next week or so. We will be one of the earliest filed cases in the country because, again, this recall happened in February. Folks contacted their lawyers. Evidence has to be collected. You obviously want to get your ducks in a row before you put something as serious as a lawsuit into place. But yes, Kline Specter will be in litigation with these lawsuits imminently.
And do you have any idea who the law firms or lawyers are that will represent EzriCare?
I don't know who's going to appear for EzriCare yet.
All right. So we're early on. I mean, has there, in your experience, is there, let's just say you're somebody that's gone to your law firm already. You've signed them up. They're sort of not really a savvy litigant, so to speak. I mean, are there circumstances where the EzriCare will just say, all right, they did their voluntary recall. So the next step to me, just like from a humanity perspective, would be, okay, let's own up to this and let's compensate those that have been injured or died because of this. Does that ever happen early on in these kind of cases?
I've been involved in cases where there was a serious injury because of a product. The product was recalled, and the defendants didn't fight very hard. It became a matter of how much and when, and what was the appropriate, the right amount for each individual. One of the things that we want to do that's right for our clients is find out who these companies are. What is their worth? What is their insurance? Can they withstand the kind of serious damage that you've done it to individuals? If you're a 30 or 40-year-old person and all you were doing was looking to lubricate your dry eyes, and you've lost your vision forever, you've had the cosmetic injury of the removal of an eye, that is a massive case. The value of that case is massive. And we want to make sure, as part of the thing that we do in our lawsuits, we take discovery of the other side. And that includes the value of the company. What are their assets? What kind of insurance do they have? And in that way, we can really come up with what is the right settlement demand for a client. And if they can't meet it, what Kline Specter excels at is going to the courtroom and letting a jury decide what is the right amount for that plaintiff.
Absolutely. So, all right, let's go back to Walgreens and CVS. The product comes in, they're supposed to take reasonable care to make sure that they're not selling, a product that's going to, result in you losing your eye or dying. I mean, I just can't even believe I'm saying this or whatever. But do they ever say to the companies that they, whose products they're selling, hey, what kind of insurance do you have? We want to make sure that, God forbid this, goes bad, that there's going to be adequate money to compensate the people that get injured. Do you know that is something in their wheelhouse? I mean, to me, it sounds like, hey, if I'm CVS, I'm not selling a product unless I know there's adequate insurance right out of the gate. I'm not even going to look at the product.
Great question. And that's another one that we'll be finding out as part of company policy and protocols. Does Walgreens, CVS, do these pharmacy companies, do they do their due diligence to find out that if a harm should come about because of one of these products, that they have adequate coverage to take care of these people? It's a great question, Greg.
All right. So I think this is a good start. I'm getting involved in these cases as well. So I'm going to be, basically relying on you gentlemen to, make it happen for me and all that. And I'm going to, I would say in 3 months from now, we should circle back and get an update. Because, what I like about this podcast, this product, is we're not already, like Johnson & Johnson talcum powder 10 years into it, and all these things have already happened. We're getting in from the ground floor. And a lot of these questions, were basically kind of designed to see how it's going to play out. I'm kind of curious. I think the public would basically like to know how their pharmacies are, handling these things, and how over-the-counter drugs can, cause such chaos. But I thank you both for coming on to the show and discussing this. And, I know you guys are going to get the job done.
Thanks for having us. We look forward to coming back.
All right. So that'll do it for this episode of Cut to the Chase. EzriCare, artificial teardrops causing all this chaos. Over the counter. Don't just assume that it's over the counter. It's going to be a safe product. But this law firm, Kline Specter, Dr. Magen, see, the nice thing about this law firm is they're not just lawyers, they're lawyers and doctors. All right. So they don't have to go out and look for some doctor or whatever that they hope knows these guys know what they're doing. If you took this product and you're having eye problems, call them up, free consultation. They'll guide you and tell you whether you have a case or not. And if you do and you sign up with them, I can rest assure you that you're going to get as good a compensation as they can do for you. All right. So, gentlemen, have a good day.
That's all for this episode of Cut to the Chase. But before you go, will you open up your podcast app and give us a 5-star review? You can also leave a comment about what you liked most or other topics you'd like us to cover. And please be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming shows. Thanks, everybody. Be safe out there.